Welcome to Sci-Fi Quantum Archives. Don't forget to like, subscribe and explore. The cold had a way of getting inside bones out there. Quiet, methodical, not through skin but through memory. Steel groaned beneath the pressure of accumulated snow, the remains of outpost Thorn buried halfway to its roofline. No new footsteps had touched the entrance in nearly 20 years. The door hadn't opened since the night it sealed itself shut during the fire. A fire that left no burn marks, no explanation, just silence and a single redacted report. 2 days before contact was lost with Satellite Link 7, the cleanup order came through. 4 names. No rotation. No handoff. They were meant to go in, tag what remained, extract any salvageable drives, and get out before conditions collapsed further. That was the phrase in the brief. Before conditions collapse. Not if. Not weather permitting. Just the inevitability of closure, the slow folding of time on places that no longer belonged in the present. Even at a distance, the station looked wrong. Angles were off. Not broken, just somehow misaligned. The wind around it didn't carry sound the way it did elsewhere. Each step toward the hatch felt like entering someone else's unfinished thought. Inside, light refused to settle. Headlamps struggled to cut the air, even without particles or smoke. Cold metal corridors had buckled, some ceilings fallen, ice claiming the low-lying paths. Old posters clung to the walls by a single edge, curled like they were pulling away from something unseen. The main commons had caved in. Power lines ran exposed like nerves. But beneath the subflooring, beneath all of it, there was still one door sealed shut. Unmarked, thick, slightly warmer to the touch. A different kind of cold surrounded it. Not the wind-driven kind. The internal kind, like something waiting just behind the frame had remembered being touched before. The logistics officer took inventory first. 4 crates, half of them rotted through. 2 lockers welded shut by rust. No paper records. No soft copies either, just voided labels and stripped cables. The technician found the lab's battery relays still intact, buried under panels no longer listed in the blueprint. Someone had tried to keep this part powered even after the rest had gone dark. Someone had failed, or chosen not to succeed. The engineer kept noticing symmetry where there shouldn't be any, scorch patterns forming mirrored outlines, char marks that didn't spread but looped back to where they started. On a cracked lens above the workbench, dust had settled in a perfect circle, unbroken. In the corner of the sealed lab, the government observer stood without speaking. Not watching the team, but the wall behind them. As if waiting for it to move. As if it had, once before. Outside, the wind changed pitch. Satellites weren't syncing. No outgoing message had confirmed. Time inside the base passed differently. Watches ran at slight offsets. Digital clocks blinked to the same second, then drifted apart again. No one slept the first night. Not from fear. No one had spoken of fear, but because dreams refused to come. As if the body understood something the mind hadn't caught up to yet. By morning, the power grid below the lab was partially restored. Lights came on in half sections, unreliable. In that same corner, behind a bank of dead monitors, a drive casing emerged from a stack of shattered filing trays. A small rectangle, industrial black, tagged with a date that hadn't happened yet. Dust on its surface lay untouched by time. The technician ran a thumb across the corner. No scratches. No sign it had ever been handled before. That was when the door behind them shut without warning. Not slammed. Not forced. Just closed with the finality of a conversation being ended from the other side. No one spoke. The hum of incomplete circuitry answered for them. The drive, still in hand, began to warm. No power source attached. No external trigger. Just warmth, slow and steady, like breath returning to lungs no longer in use. Inside that room, something had already started watching. One of the overhead lights buzzed without rhythm. Not broken. Just undecided. Shadows shifted with each flick of static, throwing the outlines of bodies against the frost-covered shelves, where every object seemed placed for a reason no one remembered. Against the far wall, beneath a sheet of brittle plastic, the first console emerged, an early 2000s workstation coated in a fine layer of insulation dust, its surface cold enough to pull heat from the skin in seconds. No visible power cable. No record of its presence in the base's last documented layout. A second bench held a milk crate of cassette tape, unlabeled except for one. Black tape, red marker. A single line across its spine with a date that did not make sense. Not in theory. Not in chronology. Not in physics. The date matched the day they arrived, year included. Not a week forward. Not a past recording misnamed. It read today's date, down to the 4-digit year that hadn't happened yet. Jokes came easy in that first minute. A prank, maybe. An archivist with a dark sense of humor. Someone trying to be remembered without being found. But no laughter followed. No relief either. Just the unspoken agreement to not react too much, not this early, not while surrounded by metal that seemed to listen. Behind a cabinet wedged shut by warped flooring, a storage box waited. Thick plastic. Industrial grade. The latches fought against frozen hinges, snapping back before catching. Inside, padded foam peeled away to reveal a drive unlike the others. Not archived. Not damaged. A rugged shell, scratched along the corners, but whole. A tiny red label adhered to one edge. 2026. The handwriting didn't match anything else in the room. No one spoke when the date was read aloud. Not because it frightened them. Not yet. The cold did most of the thinking. Made explanations feel slower. Loosened logic just enough to allow convenience. Maybe the year was wrong. Maybe the label belonged to another case and was placed here by mistake. 100 reasons surfaced, but none held for more than a moment. With no power ports left in the lab, the technician stripped an old terminal and bridged wires manually. Sparks jumped once. Nothing caught. The drive remained lifeless. But when the engineer shifted one of the broken monitors into position, the signal light blinked. Once. Then again. Not with urgency. With sequence. The screen stayed black. No boot screen. No prompts. Just a terminal line blinking against emptiness. Command queries produced nothing. No files. No directories. No timestamp. It took minutes for someone to suggest checking the hidden partitions. As if even asking the question would change something. The drive's architecture wasn't standard. It looped when scanned. Paths redirected mid-query. The technician leaned closer, not speaking, pupils narrowed at something no one else could see. One file appeared. Briefly. A single name without extension. It disappeared before it could be clicked. An unnatural warmth came from the casing. Faint at first, like a hand pressed too long against plastic. The table beneath it began to sweat through the frost. The tape, still untouched, waited on the bench. The black one with the date. It hadn't moved, but the red line across its spine had faded slightly. No one reached for it yet. Not because of fear. Fear was still far off. What held them in place was something smaller. A hesitation between breath. A quiet decision to pretend not to see the edges of what didn't belong. Outside, snow hit the sealed hatch in soft, irregular bursts. The rhythm never repeated. Not once. Inside, the drive clicked, lightly, once every 6 seconds. The lights no longer buzzed. They hummed, evenly, without power fluctuation. The same pattern echoed through the metal floor. Every heartbeat of the lab synced without command. No static. No failures. Just function. Too much function for a place that hadn't been entered in 20 years. One of the terminals coughed to life without input. A small screen, grainy with age, bled white before a single frame held steady. No sound. No boot sequence. Just an open media viewer with a paused timestamp. 1 day ahead. The name of the file had no characters, only a blank field with a single blinking cursor beside it. The technician didn't speak. Just tapped the spacebar once. The screen jumped. Static for a breath. Then footage. A wide-angle view, slightly tilted, showing the very room they stood in. Same layout. Same gear. Same crates stacked unevenly in the rear corner. A box of tools left open. The coffee mug placed by the console had its handle pointed left, exactly as it sat on the desk. No voices in the video. Just the ambient whine of low power and distant wind. One person moved into frame, reached for the power relay, adjusted it with a familiar jerk of the wrist. Everyone in the room turned toward the monitor. That motion hadn't happened yet. 6 seconds later, in the real room, the same person reached for the relay. The same motion. The same grip. Mouth half open in the same shape. A precise repeat with no chance for coincidence. No one breathed in the moment that followed. The video kept running. One by one, each person came into view, performing tasks in exact order. Moving toward drawers before deciding to check them. Scratching the back of a neck that hadn't yet itched. Glancing toward the entryway seconds before the thought to do so had even formed. The frame stuttered once, as if buffering. The technician stepped back. Someone pointed toward the footage. The cursor on the console jumped again, and the screen adjusted its brightness without being told. It wasn't replaying. Not surveillance. The lag wasn't behind. The lag was forward. A test came next. Not planned. Not spoken. Just impulse. One hand raised slowly. 5 fingers extended. Held still. The screen showed the motion first. A full 5 seconds before the actual movement happened in the room. The footage predicted the hesitation, even the slight pause halfway through the lift. An exact match, too detailed to fake. No timestamp updated. No evidence of file access. Every attempt to copy the footage failed. Each external drive returned corrupted. One attempt to record it with a handheld resulted in an empty file with no image, just a sound no one could identify. Low. Mechanical. Like an engine turning in reverse. They unplugged the terminal. The screen stayed on. The footage continued. No equipment showed signs of signal reception. No camera could be found in the room. No angles from which the footage could logically have been taken. Yet the movements on screen remained faithful. Down to the stagger in one crewmember's step as the cold pinched a nerve that hadn't been noticed until that moment. What unsettled them most wasn't the accuracy. It was the implication. Someone, or something, was recording a timeline that hadn't unfolded. Not a loop. Not memory. Something forward-facing. Something present. The screen froze. The last frame showed a door opening at the far end of the corridor. The real door stayed closed. For now. The footage began organizing itself. No one touched the keys. No commands were issued. Short segments queued in a silent row, each one tagged with meaningless alphanumeric strings. No creation date. No metadata. Just a simple play symbol beside each entry. The first opened without request. A table. The same metal slab in the storage corridor where meals were taken earlier that day. 4 bowls, half full, the same uneven pour as before. No conversation at first. Only cutlery tapping the sides of enamel. Then voices came, quiet, indistinct at first, before sharpening. A disagreement over the schedule. Whether to sleep in shift. Whether anyone could prove time hadn't already moved differently. A phrase was repeated word for word from memory. Not a paraphrase. Not approximate. Exact. In real time, someone dropped a spoon. On screen, it fell 6 seconds earlier. The second clip played by itself. Another angle. Someone alone in the tool room, flipping through a manual that hadn't been seen until that moment. The real manual was found 10 minutes later, buried behind a rusted rack, in the same orientation, folded to the same page. Each clip arrived just ahead. Never too far. Never past a threshold. Just close enough to keep the mind tethered, but never ahead enough to escape. A rhythm formed between the feed and reality, like watching thoughts leak out before they could be shaped. The technician stared longest. Shoulders drawn in. Lips pressed without comment. Hands no longer resting near the console. One sequence showed a movement no one remembered performing. A gesture toward a wall before a breath. In the room, the motion hadn't occurred. Not yet. It happened 5 seconds later. Without hesitation. One person refused to play along. Folded arms. Tight jaw. Walked away from the feed and into the lab corridor. No explanation. No look back. Just movement designed to contradict. The screen responded instantly. The footage lagged, skipped, broke into static. The feed trembled on its axis. For a full 7 seconds, no image held. Then a line of text appeared across the monitor. File integrity mismatch. Recalibrating. No one touched the machine. The room went still. Breath drew short. The lights dimmed by a fraction, not due to failure, but adjustment. Controlled. Intentional. The screen reset. The footage began again, seamless. The altered action, the deviation, was gone. In its place, the original path resumed. No record of the walk. No memory stored of defiance. The past, or what should have been the past, had been overwritten. The technician whispered without raising a voice. Said nothing to anyone in particular. Only a question, low enough to barely register. Who's running the camera? No one answered. Not because they didn't want to. Because no one believed anymore that answers mattered. The machine kept playing. The feed always caught up. The footage always led by just enough to feel like choice hadn't been removed, only shaped. In the next clip, someone smiled. No one had done that yet. The group watched it happen. 10 seconds later, the same smile broke across the same face. Not for joy. For the confirmation of something long suspected. The footage wasn't watching. It was deciding. The next file loaded without instruction. No motion toward the keyboard. No command issued aloud. It selected itself and began with silence. The footage opened on the same corridor they had passed an hour earlier, the one leading to the south maintenance hatch, half blocked by collapsed piping and an unusable lift panel. In the recording, the corridor was clear. No rubble. No obstruction. Just a clean path leading to the outer vestibule. Snow fell beyond the glass pane, thick, slanted, unforgiving. A door unlatched. Someone stepped into the frame. The face wasn't blurred. Not a shadow. Clear enough to confirm what the eyes already knew. One of the team, still seated just across the room, watching the screen in real time. Not moving. Not rising. Not touching the boots lined near the bench. Yet the figure on screen was already dressed for the cold, gloved, layered, hood drawn, pulling on straps in the precise sequence used earlier that morning. No sound came from the video. Just the thud of wind pressing against the outer shell, the faint shake of steel against permafrost. The clock mounted on the vestibule wall glowed with a time 30 minutes forward. Not rounded. Not approximate. Down to the second. The screen held the image as the figure pushed open the hatch, stepped into white, and disappeared behind the drift. In the room, the person in question stood without prompting. Not rushed. Not confused. As if summoned by some internal memory that hadn't been written yet. No coat. No urgency. Just motion toward the corridor that had no clear path in real space. Nobody blocked the way. Not out of trust. Out of absence. Thought collapsed under what could not be reasoned. 7 minutes passed before anyone followed. The hatch in the footage had remained open for less than 10 seconds. In the real vestibule, the seal had fractured. Hinges bowed inward. Snow packed against the exit like it had never been cleared. Beyond it, footsteps stretched into the storm, not erratic but careful, measured, like the walker had full visibility. No sign of stumbling. No calls for help. The wind outside wasn't steady. It pulsed. Stopped without cause. Then moved in crosscurrents, like pressure came from multiple directions at once. A shape lay collapsed 20 meters from the hatch. Curled in half. Knees to chest. Back arched slightly like caught mid-motion, as if turning or listening. Not sprawled. Not fallen. Deliberately posed. The eyes were open. No ice on the lashes. No frostbite on the lips. Skin unbroken. Except for a single bead of frozen condensation just beneath the jawline, balanced, unmelted. Same posture. Same stillness. Same expression caught in the final frame of the footage before it cut out. The return to the lab was without speech. The door sealed behind them with its usual groan, yet no hand had touched the lock. The footage had stopped. The cursor pulsed again beside a blank file name. A new icon appeared underneath it. No video thumbnail. Just the outline of a person drawn in crude ASCII, sitting at a console, alone. The time below the image read 10 minutes from the present. And counting. Wind struck the station with a weight that bent steel. Not sudden. Built slow, like something testing the outer shell for softness. External sensors stopped reporting at once. Not failed. Just ceased. Communication uplinks staggered out in fragments, then fell quiet altogether. No signal bounced back. No pings. The last outgoing transmission contained only a clipped sentence, half-coded, cut off mid-word. No metadata confirmed its release. The hatch wouldn't budge. Internal clamps remained loose. External frost sealed it in full contour, not layered but fused. A fine powder of frozen condensation crept inward through the edge seams. Breath began to hang longer in the air. Lights dimmed without cycling off. The footage moved without pause. Hours forward. Not one file. A single extended stream now playing from the same position as before. Time skipped. Minutes missing. Frames dropped and rejoined. The layout on screen no longer aligned. The same room, but details wrong. One table repositioned. A cot moved closer to the emergency ladder. The map board near the secondary corridor held markings that hadn't been placed yet. Or ever. No one admitted what was already understood. The footage wasn't just documenting choices. It was shaping the physical memory of the base itself. A figure appeared on screen. Alone. Heavy steps echoed through concrete and aluminum. No identification needed. The face was clear. Body shaking, not from cold but from containment. Shoulders lifted, eyes unfixed, hands clawing at the wall for balance. The camera angle was high. From a vantage point with no mount, no visible source. The view panned as the figure turned down a hall no one recognized. No junction in that direction. No stairwell on any blueprint. No slope in the floor to account for a descent. Just a narrow, slanted passage winding down at an angle too precise to be accidental. The scream didn't carry long. Not a shriek. Not panic. A raw, cutting expulsion that cracked partway through and stopped without breath. The feed froze on a single frame. The figure bent forward, mouth open, hands at the ears, as if something too loud to name had split the air in two. The real corridor, when checked, held no turn. A wall stood firm where the footage showed an opening. Cold to the touch. Seamless. At first light, or what counted as light through storm-thickened sky, the wall was gone. Replaced by a corridor no one remembered building. Same slope. Same width. Same strip of cold lighting running across the ceiling. No wiring exposed. No damage from installation. The air near it held no temperature. Not cold. Not warm. Just a blankness that made skin forget how to respond. One of the team reached for the entryway and stopped. No reason offered. No protest voiced. Just a quiet hand, open at the side, not moving. The feed resumed without being touched. The stairwell remained on screen. Empty. Still. Waiting. The next timestamp cued itself. 4 hours ahead. The corridor lights in the footage were already active. And the screen had started recording again. Without prompt. Without camera. Without anyone pressing record. The frame on the screen adjusted itself. Not to a new angle. Not to a new moment. To itself. A screen appeared within the screen. The same room. The same terminal. The same footage playing. Not mirrored. Not delayed. Precise. Layered. The angle slightly offset, as if viewed from just above eye level. No device in the room could account for it. No camera mounted there. No reflective surface capable of trickery. The image within the image also displayed a screen. And within that screen, another. Each frame drew closer to the present moment, but never quite touching it. The recursion built until perspective lost shape. A hand moved at the console in real time. The motion appeared one layer deep, then another, each version happening a fraction before the real hand followed. Like chasing an echo with no source. No one moved to speak. One stepped back. Another adjusted the collar of a coat already too warm for the room. No heating had been active for hours, yet sweat gathered at the base of the neck. A jacket was thrown over the nearest terminal. The screen turned black. For a moment, only the hum of unseen circuits filled the air. The footage continued anyway. Not paused. Not interrupted. The recursive screen persisted, even without a source. A second screen powered on. No one had touched it. The surge came from a panel that had remained dead since arrival. No connection established. No boot drive inserted. But there it was, the same image. The same room. The same layers folding in on themselves. The screen observed without participation. That was the moment one of them moved with purpose. Crossed the room, pulled the hard drive free, and crushed it against the steel corner of the desk. No argument. No ceremony. The casing bent inward. The inner disk snapped with a sound that felt like relief. Silence returned, brief and cold. Then the third terminal switched on. A brighter screen. Higher resolution. No time to process how or why. It picked up where the destroyed drive had left off. Not reloaded. Continued. The same layered image. Only this time, the outermost layer showed the group from above, right then, right there. Watching themselves watch themselves, captured from a position no one could see or access. The question that followed wasn't asked aloud. It came in the shift of weight from one foot to another. In the way shoulders tensed unevenly. In how nobody looked directly at the screen anymore. Whatever was recording, it wasn't using anything they understood. Whatever was playing, it didn't require permission. A keyboard unplugged itself with a soft mechanical click. The screen brightened. The footage kept showing them. Not just what they were doing. What they were about to decide. The recursive image zoomed in again. No frame rate lag. No delay. Every breath, every blink, every twitch recorded in advance. There was no camera. But something had seen them long before they ever arrived. The feed split. Not into panels, but into paths. Each segment of the footage displayed a different room, each containing only one person. The angles were intimate, invasive, captured from impossible positions, a lens watching from behind the eyes or beneath the skin. In the first, someone forced open the exhaust shaft. Tools scraped against metal, the sound drawn out, stripped of its pitch. Breath came fast. Gloves trembled. The duct narrowed too soon, sharp edges catching cloth and skin. Frost settled across the inside of the throat. Limbs locked in unnatural angles. The feed held the final frame too long. Eyes open. Not from fear. From refusal. Another sequence began. A cot dragged to the corner of the communications room. One figure hunched beside a dismantled console. Fingers tapped at a dead keypad. A voice whispered into a handheld mic, transmitting into silence. The radio had already been removed hours earlier. The person in the footage never seemed to notice. Kept speaking. Low, dry, the same message repeating every 23 seconds. No variation. Just endurance. The kind that forgets what it's enduring for. A third file showed a notebook. Handwriting filled every line, clean at first, then erratic. The words no longer formed thoughts. Just repetitions of place names and numerical strings. The camera focused on the final page. A countdown half erased. The sound of pacing filled the space. No footfalls. Just breath intersecting with motion. There was no voice to guide interpretation. No overlay. No warning. Just a choice presented through silence. The group stopped watching as a unit. No signal marked the split. It arrived through posture, through glances towards separate corridors, through a quiet withdrawal into individual space. The footage didn't instruct. It suggested. Each watched a different screen. Each began to believe theirs was not only probable, but already in motion. One pack supplies. Quietly. No announcement. The movements mirrored what had just played out in the frame 3 feet away. The exact angle of the shoulders. The same bent knee while lifting the satchel. Another stared at a wall, unmoving, until it ceased to resemble anything solid. When they finally spoke, the words were not addressed to anyone, but matched precisely what the footage had recorded them saying moments earlier. No one asked whether they could still stop it. The question held no weight anymore. The terminals continued queuing new futures. Not forecasts. Instructions. All options felt both familiar and compulsory. Someone disappeared from the room without being noticed. Their absence only felt once the next clip began, showing the same person outside, kneeling beside the broken weather station, carving shapes into the snow. The shapes matched a diagram taped to the back of the server room door, a sheet no one recalled placing there. The footage was no longer predictive. It had become reflective, like memory recorded before experience. By the time the last file loaded, no one stood in the same place. The group had divided. Not with argument. With certainty. Each believed their outcome had already started. The footage didn't lie. But it didn't clarify either. It only revealed what had already chosen them. Static overtook the monitor without transition. No fade, no corruption. A complete reset. Soundless, colorless, absolute. No files remained. No interface. Just the raw pulse of empty signal, humming through the room like breath trapped beneath the floor. Only one remained. The final terminal stood untouched for minutes that didn't count. The clock at the bottom of the screen no longer moved. The digits were gone entirely, replaced by a blank field that refused to refresh. No power source could explain its operation. The main relay had been severed the night before. Batteries drained. Generators iced to silence. Yet the screen glowed without strain. No voices echoed from the base. No footstep. No machines recalibrating. The station held its shape, but not its function. A kind of stillness had taken over, not dead, not dormant. Waiting. Without command, the footage resumed. Not from where it had left off. From before. A jump backward that ignored chronology, operating as if time were nothing but a location on a shelf. The same exterior shot from day one appeared. Wind dragging snow across half-buried architecture. Lights inside the vestibule sputtering to life. Not the same lights. Not the same sputter. Details changed. Small, subtle, intentional. Inside the lab, the positions were wrong. Equipment moved. Paperwork placed in an order that hadn't existed before. A jacket left on a chair that had never been used. Faces unfamiliar, speaking in words not yet said. A different team. New voices. New choices. One of them moved toward the storage crate in the corner. The lid lifted. Fingers brushed aside frost and dust that hadn't had time to form. A drive, black casing, red label, sat exactly where it had the first time. Still warm. Still humming. The screen they approached was already powered on. No boot. No delay. Just a file. No title. No extension. The only detail listed, a date. Today. The last frame held for a long time. No movement. No music. Just the image of a hand reaching for the keyboard. Before it touched, the screen cut to black. And nothing followed. Thank you for watching and sticking with me to the end. Now, if you believe humanity deserves a future among the stars, do subscribe now. Only those who'd abandon Earth to its fate will scroll past.